Chad's hand was on the bar when the old man's voice stopped him cold. What happened in the next 3 minutes would cost Chad his job and prove why you should never judge a man by the gray in his beard. Age is just a number, until someone shows you what 8 decades of discipline looks like. Watch what happens when this trainer learns respect the hard way. Type respect if you believe strength has no expiration date. His name was Joseph Caruso, 80 years old, but everyone who knew him called him Joe. And at 6:30 on a Wednesday morning at Apex Fitness, Joe walked through the door with the same purpose he'd carried for 60 years. Straight back, steady stride, gym bag over his shoulder that was older than most of the equipment. Chad Miller noticed him immediately. 26 years old, certified personal trainer for 8 months, and already convinced he knew everything about fitness. He watched Joe head toward the free weights section, watched the old man's weathered hands, the slight stiffness in his gait, the way his shoulders were broad but his frame was lean. "Sir?" Chad intercepted him before Joe reached the weight rack. "Sir, can I help you find something? We have a wonderful senior wellness area upstairs. Recumbent bikes, resistance bands, much more appropriate." Joe looked at him, eyes the color of steel. "I'm fine here, son. Been lifting in this section for 40 years. "Right." Chad's smile was practiced, professional, patronizing. "I'm sure you have, but Apex has new safety protocols, insurance requirements. We need to make sure our senior members are working within appropriate parameters." He gestured toward the stairs. "The Wellness Center has certified senior specialists." "I'm certified too." Joe's voice was quiet, controlled, and not wasting my time. He moved past Chad toward the deadlift platform. Chad followed, his irritation rising. This happened sometimes. Older guys who couldn't accept their limitations, who thought watching YouTube videos made them athletes, who'd throw out their backs and sue the gym. "Sir, I really can't let you use this equipment unsupervised." Joe set down his bag, started pulling out his lifting belt. Worn leather, cracked with age, but maintained. Cared for. "Then supervise." "That's not how this works." Chad crossed his arms. "You want to use the heavy equipment, you need an assessment, you need to demonstrate basic competency. And frankly, at your age, at my age, I've forgotten more about lifting than you've learned." Joe's voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. "But I'm happy to demonstrate competency." Chad felt his face flush. He'd dealt with difficult clients before, but this was different. This was direct disrespect in front of other members. The morning crowd was watching now. 3 guys at the cable machines, 2 women on treadmills, all eyes on the confrontation. "Sir, I'm trying to help you. You could seriously hurt yourself. This isn't a game. These are serious weights for serious athletes." Joe looked at the bar loaded with 45-pound plates. Some younger guys set up from the previous evening. 4 plates per side, 405 pounds total, plus the bar. Chad had added the weights himself last night, showing off for a client. "That's serious enough?" Joe asked, nodding at the loaded bar. Chad laughed, actually laughed. "Sir, that's over 400 pounds. Elite powerlifters work years to move that weight. You'd need to start with the bar, maybe add some 5s. Build a foundation." "I have a foundation." Joe's hands were steady as he chalked his palms. Methodical, practiced, movements that came from decades of repetition. Built it a long time ago. Something in the way he moved made Chad pause. The certainty, the lack of hesitation. But no, impossible. The man was 80. Maybe he'd been strong once. 30 years ago. 40. But time took everything from everyone. "Sir, please, don't embarrass yourself." Joe looked up, those steel eyes locked on Chad's face. "Son, I stopped worrying about embarrassment in 1967. That was my first tour in Vietnam. I was a ranger. Hand-to-hand combat instructor at Fort Benning for 22 years after that. Taught men how to break bones and save lives, and every morning for 60 years, I've done the same thing. I've lifted, I've trained, I've maintained discipline when everything else fell apart. He straightened. So I'm going to ask you once, respectfully. Step back. Chad's mouth opened, closed. He looked at the bar, looked at Joe, looked at the small crowd gathering. He should call Jerry, the gym owner. He should document this for liability. He should stop this before it became a disaster. But something in Joe's voice, in his eyes, in the way he approached that bar like they were old friends. If you hurt yourself, I won't. Joe positioned himself, feet shoulder-width apart, toes slightly out, hands gripping the bar with perfect form, mixed grip, right hand over, left hand under. He'd done this 10,000 times. 20,000. The number didn't matter anymore. He took a breath. Deep, controlled. The way you breathe before a mission, before contact, before anything that requires everything you have. Chad watched, ready to jump in, ready to call emergency services, ready to say I told you so when this stubborn old man... Joe pulled. The bar came off the ground like it weighed half what it did. Smooth. No jerking. No struggling. Pure mechanical efficiency born from decades of perfect repetition. 405 pounds rose as Joe straightened, locked out, standing tall, the weight stable in his hands like it belonged there. The gym went silent. Chad's clipboard clattered to the floor. Joe held the position. 3 seconds. 5. Looking at Chad the entire time. Not straining, not shaking, just holding, making a point that needed no words. Holy... One of the guys at the cable machine whispered it. Did he just... 405. The other one's voice was awe. That's 405, at 80. Chad couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't process what his eyes were telling him. This wasn't possible. Shouldn't be possible. The man was 80 years old. 80. Nobody did this at 80. Nobody. How? Chad's voice cracked. How are you? The office door opened. Jerry Blackwood, gym owner, former college linebacker, walked out. He'd been watching on the security cameras, watching the confrontation, watching his trainer harass one of the gym's longest-standing members, watching Joe prove what Jerry had known for 40 years. Chad, Jerry's voice cut across the gym. My office. Now. Joe lowered the weight, controlled descent, perfect form all the way down. The plates touched concrete with barely a sound. He straightened, breathing steady, and looked at Chad. Son, strength isn't about age. It's about consistency, discipline, respect for the iron, and respect for yourself. He picked up his chalk. I've been deadlifting since before your father was born. Army Rangers don't quit because calendars change. We adapt, we persist, we do the work. Jerry was beside them now. His face was stone. Joe, I apologize. Sincerely. This should never have happened. It's all right, Jerry. Joe was already setting up his actual working weight. 3 plates per side. Young man didn't know. He should have asked. Jerry turned to Chad. Office, now, we're going to discuss what client respect means. Chad followed, his face burning. Behind him, the morning crowd was gathering around Joe. Questions flying. How do you train? What's your routine? Can you teach us? The women from the treadmills had stopped running. One pulled out her phone, asking if she could share his story. In Jerry's office, the conversation was short and final. You judged a member by his age. You attempted to restrict access based on assumption. You ignored his experience and dismissed his capability. Jerry's voice was ice. Joe Caruso has been a member of this gym since 1984. He's forgotten more about proper form than you'll ever know. He was pulling 400 pounds when you were in diapers. I was trying to protect him. You were protecting your ego. Jerry pulled up Joe's member file on his computer, turned the screen. 80 years old, former Army Ranger, hand-to-hand combat instructor at Fort Benning for 22 years, trained thousands of soldiers, holds 3 age group powerlifting records, has a standing invitation to speak at military fitness conferences. He looked at Chad. And you told him he belonged in the Senior Wellness Center. Chad's stomach dropped. I didn't know. That's the problem. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You saw gray hair and assumed weakness. In this gym, we assess people by their character and capability, not their birthday. Jerry opened a drawer, pulled out a folder. This is your termination paperwork. I need you to clean out your locker and leave. Jerry, please. I made a mistake. You made a judgment, and you embarrassed a veteran who's earned more respect than you've shown. Jerry stood. I won't have trainers who can't see past appearances. Joe could have walked away, could have complained. Instead, he proved his point with dignity and grace. That's the kind of member we want. That's the kind of person we celebrate. He walked to the door, opened it. You have 30 minutes. Back in the weight room, Joe was mid-set. Deadlifts. 315 pounds for reps. Smooth, controlled, breathing steady. The morning crowd had grown. Regular members who knew him, knew people who'd heard about what happened. Everyone watching in respectful silence as an 80-year-old man demonstrated what dedication looked like. Between sets, he talked, answered questions, shared stories about discipline and consistency, about training rangers at Benning, about learning that strength wasn't about proving anything to anyone except yourself, about how the iron was honest. It didn't care about your age or your excuses. You either put in the work or you didn't. I started serious lifting in 1963, he told a young guy who couldn't have been 25. I was 17. Sergeant told me Rangers needed to be strong in body and mind. That physical discipline built mental discipline, that you couldn't lead men if you couldn't lead yourself. He chalked his hands. 60 years later, I still believe that. The calendar changed, the principle didn't. Jerry returned. Chad was gone, escorted out by gym staff. Jerry stood beside Joe, waiting until the set was finished. Joe, I'm sorry. That was inexcusable. Joe wiped down the bar. Careful. Respectful of the equipment. He's young, Jerry. Thought he knew. Most people do. He looked at the gym owner. You didn't have to fire him. Yes, I did. For him as much as anything. He needs to learn this lesson before he hurts someone or humiliates someone who won't handle it as well as you did. Jerry shook his head. You've been coming here for 40 years. You're part of this place, part of the family, and family protects each other. The young guy who'd been listening spoke up. Mr. Caruso, could you teach me? Proper form. I've been lifting 2 years and I can barely pull 315. Joe looked at him. Saw the respect, the genuine desire to learn. What's your name, son? Marcus. Marcus, I'll teach you. But first rule. Don't call me Mr. Caruso. Makes me feel old. His eyes crinkled, almost a smile. Call me Joe, or Iron Joe, if you want to use the nickname the Rangers gave me in '72. Iron Joe. Marcus grinned. That fits. Word spread. By the next week, Joe had started an informal morning class, teaching proper form, sharing decades of knowledge. The Senior Wellness Center upstairs stayed empty while 60-year-olds joined 80-year-old Joe in the free weight section. Jerry made it official. Iron Joe's morning crew became a regular program. No age limit, just respect, discipline, and willingness to learn. Joe hung a sign near the deadlift platform. Simple, direct. The words he'd lived by for 60 years. Strength is earned through consistency. Respect is earned through character. Age is just the number of years you've had to practice both. Strength doesn't fade when you honor it. Discipline doesn't expire when you maintain it. And respect isn't something you grant based on appearance. It's something you earn through action and give through wisdom. If this story inspired you, the next one's about a homeless veteran who corrected a Marine Corps drill instructor in public. What happened next? The DI's response will give you chills. Subscribe to Honor Stories for more tales of hidden strength that prove stereotypes wrong. Comment, discipline. If you believe age is just a number when character is timeless, and hit that like button if you think we should judge people by their actions, not their birthdays. Share this with someone who needs to remember that the strongest people often carry their power quietly until they need to prove a point. And when they do, everyone watches, everyone learns, and everyone remembers that Iron Joe lifted 405 pounds at 80 and held it long enough to teach a lesson worth more than any certification.